When Disney acquired 20th Century Fox for a whopping $71.3 billion, Hollywood was changed forever. The House of Mouse acquired everything from the studio's film production studios to television networks, and even streaming service Hulu. However, for comic book fans, it was the fact Marvel Studios would regain the rights to the Fantastic Four and X-Men franchises which really got them excited. They're admittedly a small part of a very big merger, but one which would make Disney a lot of money over the coming years. We're already seeing a sudden increase in merchandise featuring the characters. Now both teams are on their way to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and we can expect the heroes and villains to make up each franchise to undergo some major changes. In the case of the Fantastic Four, Marvel's first family has been unlucky enough to star in 3 terrible movies over the past 20 years, so they're in desperate need of redemption on the big screen. With that in mind, we're now taking a look at what Marvel Studios must deliver to make sure that their iteration of the Fantastic Four is truly marvellous. I am Kirsten for What Culture, and we are going to be talking about the 10 things that the MCU must deliver in the Fantastic Four. Number 10. Skip the origin story. When Spider-Man was brought into the MCU, there's no denying that it would have been fun to see Marvel Studios take on Peter Parker's origin story. However, it wasn't entirely necessary, and the same can be said for the Fantastic Four when they returned to the big screen. They travelled into outer space, got bombarded with cosmic rays, and returned to Earth with, well, fantastic superpowers. There's really no need to waste time dealing with that, and it could just as easily be touched on with a few throwaway lines or flashbacks lasting no more than a few seconds. In fact, we're sure it could even be tied into the events of the Avengers Endgame, or any one of the snaps. Previous Fantastic Four movies have made the mistake of making the team's origin story far too complicated and convoluted, so keeping things simple is the best possible approach to this reboot. Number 9. No teenage superheroes. For the love of God, Marvel, do not make the new Fantastic Four a group of teenagers. It's a concept which crashed and burned in the ultimate line of comic books, and one Josh Trank attempted to pull off on the big screen with his critically panned 2015 reboot. In a way, the idea that the heroes are part of some sort of government-funded think tank is a clever one, but it also robs the team of much of what makes them special. They're a family of Imaginauts who embark on missions together without any sort of interference. Of course, just like using an adult Spider-Man might have been problematic, how do you explain where this team has been hiding? Well, they actually got their powers as adults. Reed Richards even had his white hair, and their absence could be explained by them getting their powers after Avengers Infinity War or during Avengers Endgame. Alternatively, they may have spent years in a different part of the universe. Simply put, there are ways around it which definitely don't require a teenage team of superheroes. Number 8. A comic-accurate take on Doctor Doom. In the first Fantastic Four movie, Victor Von Doom was a businessman who funded the team's trip into outer space. The sequel, Rise of the Silver Surfer, leaned a little more into the villain's comic book roots, but was ultimately another disappointment. The less said about the travesty in 2015's reboot, the better. The point is, 3 movies in and we still haven't seen the Doctor Doom. The MCU must change that, and doing so couldn't be easier. For starters, it should be established that he went to college with Reed Richards, and that the future Mr. Fantastic played a role in the accident which left Victor horribly scarred. To begin with, a smaller role for Doom in Fantastic Four might be a good idea, but he's a villain with the potential to serve as a big bad to this entire shared world, so we don't necessarily need to see him contained to just the one franchise. Number 7. Leading roles for John Krasinski and Emily Blunt. Marvel Studios has a fantastic, no pun intended, casting director in Sarah Finn, and they don't tend to take notice of online fan casts when it comes to who plays the MCU's heroes and villains. However, there's a very vocal desire online to see real-life married couple John Krasinski and Emily Blunt take on the roles of Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman. They most definitely look the part, and Krasinski, who is also an accomplished filmmaker, has expressed interest in playing the stretchy superhero on a number of occasions now. Many fans can probably live without Blunt, but if her husband doesn't lead the Fantastic Four franchise, then we feel sorry for whoever does, as the backlash is bound to be sizable. Number 6, emphasise the family dynamic. The previous movies certainly tried to make this happen, but never quite managed to nail what it means for the Fantastic Four to be Marvel's first family. Sure, it was fun seeing the Human Torch toying with the Thing, while Reed and Sue being romantically involved is always inevitable. However, the team never really ended up feeling like a true family. The brother-sister dynamic between Sue and Johnny Storm was surface level at best, while Reed being tortured by the fact that he couldn't cure Ben Grimm, who is his best friend and very much like a brother to him, just became a weird subplot involving Doctor Doom. The MCU's version of the Fantastic Four should be a family movie about a family of superheroes, and that's why it's so important for us to pick up with a version of the team that isn't new. At this point, their dynamics should have already been established, and it would be no bad thing if Reed and Sue had already had their son Franklin at this point in their story. Number 5, the Galactus and Silver Surfer we want and deserve. Remember when Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer did a surprisingly decent job with the surfboard riding hero from outer space? If so, then we're betting you also recall that cringeworthy take on Galactus, which essentially portrayed the iconic villain as a, well, nondescript cloud. There were some hints that something might be inside that, but the sequel's portrayal of the World Eater was comically bad, and it's now down to Marvel Studios to make things right. When it comes to an introduction, however, it should definitely be within this reboot. Oh, and yes, Galactus definitely needs to look exactly as he does in the source material, regardless of how silly that may be. Number 4, the Baxter Building. There were rumours that Avengers Tower would become Oscorp as it was in Spider-Man Homecoming, that we learned Tony Stark had decided to sell the building. While it had clearly been redesigned to some extent by the time that movie sequels rolled around, there was no mention of a new owner, and Disney's on-again, off-again relationship with Sony makes Norman Osborn an unlikely candidate. Fantastic Four, on the other hand, would be the ideal choice to take over Tony Stark's old pad and turn it into a superhero headquarters that everything in New York City revolves around. Bear in mind that unlike the Avengers or X-Men, the public loves this team, so it definitely adds up for them to have their headquarters serve as a shining beacon of hope in a post-Avengers Endgame world. The Baxter Building is also more than just another skyscraper, it's where the heroes live, and contains everything from Reed's massive laboratories to portals to different dimensions like the Negative Zone. Marvel Studios can have a lot of fun with it, and making their base anywhere else would be foolish. Number 3, some fantastic team-ups. Pairing up any hero with the Avengers just makes them another member of the team. Captain Marvel and Doctor Strange, for example. But when it comes to the Fantastic Four, they don't suddenly transform into the Fantastic Five, when the likes of Spider-Man and She-Hulk lend a helping hand. These team-ups have always been great fun in the comic books, regardless of whether it's the Human Torch hanging out with the Web-Slinger, or heroes like Black Panther and Namor the Submariner working alongside the iconic foursome. Taking advantage of those in the reboot would be wise, especially when it will need all the help it can get to wash away the bad taste left by the previous films. After all, Marvel Studios essentially saved the Spider-Man franchise by pairing the hero up with Iron Man in Homecoming, a move which dramatically increased interest in that reboot. In the case of Fantastic Four, the same should apply, and some high-profile cameos will be both a smart business decision and incredibly rewarding to fans of the team's comic book adventures. Number 2, classic comic book visuals. We alluded to this talking about Galactus, but something that's essential for the Fantastic Four franchise to succeed are visuals which pay homage to their comic book roots. We've seen a cheesy take on the team and one completely grounded in reality, but a middle ground does exist, and Marvel Studios delivering that is must for a reboot. Whether we're talking about the classic comic book costumes, Mole Man bursting out of the ground with a giant monster in tow, or even a CGI Thing who looks like he's been torn straight from the page, all that will go on a long way helping Fantastic Four to succeed. At its core, it's a wonderfully weird, vibrant franchise which is unlike the Avengers or any other superhero team you can imagine. Fully embracing that will ensure that Fantastic Four feels like something new from the very start, and Josh Trank's movie proved that attempting to reinvent them almost inevitably ends in disaster. Number 1, make them the new Avengers. We're fully expecting to see more of the Avengers in the MCU. There are even rumours of Captain Marvel 2 setting the stage for New Avengers, and that's definitely a franchise we hope to see continue. However, after seeing them revive so much of the spotlight over the first few phases, it's about time a new team step into the spotlight, and Reed Richards and the Fantastic Four are the right heroes to lead the charge moving forward. Just like the MCU's heroes rallied around the Avengers, so too should they turn to this iconic foursome when it comes to any future threats to this shared world. As we mentioned, the Baxter building can be a beacon of hope for Earth's mightiest heroes to rally around, and with threats like Galactus, Annihilus, and any number of villains from the Negative Zone all on their way to the MCU, it makes perfect sense for the Fantastic Four to be the first line of defense. The Avengers should live on, but it's definitely time for this foursome to get their time to shine. And these are the 10 things that we think the MCU needs to deliver for a new Fantastic Four movie. What are your thoughts on a new movie? Leave us a comment down below and let us know. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, click that subscribe button. But for now, I have been Kirsten from What Culture, and I shall see you in the next video.